we have with us Deputy Leader Ryan Spain and our floor leader, Patrick Windhorst. We are going to be taking questions at the end, so please, if you do have a question, text it to me. You can text me at 630-303-3611. All right, now I'm going to pass things off to get us started to Ryan Spain.
Well, thanks so much, and good afternoon. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Here we are again, and it's getting a little tiring having these press conferences reacting to yet another corruption indictment that is occurring in the state of Illinois. So here it is, another day, another conviction in federal court, this time for Tim Mapes, who was the longtime chief of staff for Mike Madigan, and his role in the Madigan gatekeeper, the Madigan Enterprise that has been on full display through multiple trials, continues to be shown off. And so in reacting to the decision of the jurors today and their verdict, certainly it's a good day that justice is being served and is long overdue for the state of Illinois. But it's also certainly a sad day, because here we have jurors and the federal court stepping up to do what should have been done a long time ago, and that's cleaning up the crisis of corruption that continues to plague the state of Illinois. We have a lot of work to do, and this verdict does not end that work or diminish the other things that need to happen to change the reality in the state of Illinois that continues to be plagued by a need for ethics reform, rooting out corruption, and making changes to the way our state government works. We've seen in reactions already, just coming through this verdict in the last hour, former Democratic House staffers talking about the problems that existed within the Tim Mapes culture that was created and still exists in the House, and that how much more work needs to be done. And so I guess I would say I serve as the ranking Republican member on the Ethics and Elections Committee in the Illinois General Assembly. And if you take us back, this is not the first corruption verdict that we've been providing a reaction to. One of those happened just in May. The ComEd 4 trial concluded with guilty verdicts. And what was happening still in May was the legislature was in session. The legislature could have and certainly should have taken this as an opportunity to step up to the plate and deliver meaningful ethics reforms for the people of the state of Illinois. That didn't happen. The Democratic leaders were silent. The governor has been silent on this topic. Much more work needs to happen. And how many more guilty convictions need to be delivered by the federal court before legislators will start cleaning up the mess that continues to exist from 50 years of Mike Madigan's ruling of the state of Illinois? I'm pleased to be joined today by our Republican floor leader, that's State Representative Patrick Windhorst, who served as a former prosecutor and state's attorney in Massac County. And Patrick, I'll turn it over to you for more reaction to the verdict.
Well, thank you, Ryan. Good afternoon. As you heard, I'm State Representative Patrick Windhorst. I represent the 117th District, which is all a part of 10 counties in southernmost Illinois. I currently serve as a House Republican floor leader, and I also serve on the House Ethics and Elections Committee. Today's guilty verdict is the latest in a string of examples of the urgent need for ethics reform to clean up corruption in Illinois. Tim Mapes has been found guilty of perjury and attempted obstruction of justice. For those offenses, he faces 20 years on the obstruction of justice count and 5 years for perjury. This case demonstrates the hold that Mike Madigan had over state government. Tim Mapes was offered immunity from prosecution by the federal government, meaning that all he had to do was tell the truth and he would not have been charged with a crime. Instead, he lied to protect Mike Madigan anyway. No one man should have that kind of power over his staff, his friends, the political process, and especially the legislative process that Mike Madigan had. And he will have his day in court to answer charges for RICO violations, bribery, and racketeering charges next year. A sweeping federal investigation into widespread corruption throughout the Madigan era has resulted in the indictment and arrest and conviction of multiple elected officials and guilty verdicts against the ComEd 4 and now Chief of Staff to Madigan Tim Mapes. In May, House Republicans joined together to call for comprehensive ethics reform prior to the end of session. In response to our news conference, the chairman of the House Ethics and Elections Committee told a media outlet there was no appetite to rush an ethics package based on what the mainstream media says. He said that the heavy lifting on ethics reform would be handled over the summer by an ethics working group. Well, we're toward the end of August. The summer is almost over. Tim Mapes has been found guilty. The ComEd 4 have been found guilty. Speaker Madigan is headed to trial. And we have no indication that the Democrats have done anything on ethics reform. With all this said, in the May news conference, House Republican leader Tony McCombie said, ethics reform should be the General Assembly's top priority. How many indictments is too many? How many court rulings do we need to make ethical behavior stop, unethical behavior stop? And let me add, how many guilty verdicts is it going to take for the Democrats to join with Republicans and pass tough, necessary, sweeping reforms to our ethics laws to clean up government and stamp out corruption for good? The time to act is now. I'll now turn it back over to Leader Spain to answer questions.
Well, thanks very much, Patrick. And let me just close with this, because as Representative Windhorst said, the time is now for action. And here we are yet again, receiving guilty verdicts for all of those involved in the Mike Madigan political and government operation. And we need to say, what are we going to do about it? And as we watched nothing happen during legislative session in the spring, nothing happening to move ethics reform and clean up corruption in the state of Illinois happening over the summer, we need to do more. As former staffers have said, we certainly agree. And in fact, it's time to call upon Governor Pritzker to convene the Illinois General Assembly for a special session dedicated to ethics reform. I guess it appears that we're not able to do those things during regular order because the legislature is distracted with other duties. So what we need is to come together in a special, focused, dedicated session to think about how we clean up the crisis of corruption in the state of Illinois. And so Republicans are ready on this. We have nearly 80 bills that have already been filed. They're available for debate and consideration. They should receive up or down votes for how do we instill higher ethical standards for elected officials? How can we offer government transparency so that no one is able to consolidate power in such a way that they abuse it for their own personal or political benefit? So we have a lot of work to do, and a special session on ethics and corruption needs to take place. And one of the most important things that could come out of that is a thorough examination and rewriting of Mike Madigan's House rules. The rules of the House that were written and developed by Tim Mapes and Mike Madigan are still the rules of the House. And they are the common denominator for so many of the problems that we see about how corruption is so pervasive in our state government. A special session dedicated to making those changes would be greatly important. So let me stop there and open it up for questions.
Hey, Leader Spain, it's Jeremy Gorner. Can you hear me? The
Yep.
Tribune.
Yep, Jeremy.
How are you? Speaker Welch's spokesperson released a statement. Just wanted to see if you had reaction. In addition to, she said, in addition to electing a new speaker, hiring a new chief of staff, and building a new diverse leadership team, the House recently passed comprehensive ethics reform, which Republicans voted against, and hired a new legislative inspector general who has a reputation of tenacity and independence. Speaker Welch has always said he believes in due process, and a guilty verdict is a signal the law is working. However, if the minority leader has any ideas on how to strengthen federal perjury laws, we're all ears. Any reaction to that, guys?
Yeah, sure. A couple of things. First of all, the ethics reform that the Speaker's office mentioned led to the resignation of the legislative inspector general, who claimed that the legislation actually weakened the protections of her office. And so Republicans were very disappointed that we would indulge anything that would make the office of the legislative inspector general less effective. We need to empower that office with more tools. We have repeatedly called for subpoena powers to be given to that office so that investigations can take place and move forward without having the sign off of the very same members of the legislature who may sometimes be subject to those inquiries. So I take great exception to the claim that ethics reform has already been delivered, but ethics reform will need to be a continual process in the state of Illinois to root out this longstanding culture of corruption that needs to be delivered. And then finally, I would say I take particular umbrage at the speaker's claim. I mean, the speaker was really galvanized into office by his leadership of the special investigating committee that Republicans called for to convene and thoroughly examine the corrupt activities of Mike Madigan. He served as the chairman of that committee and shut down the entire investigation. He obstructed the ability for us to do our work for the legislature to police itself and hold leaders like Mike Madigan accountable. So that's one of the things in terms of rewriting the rules of the House that need to be thoroughly considered, because the special investigating committee that was chaired by Chris Welch at that time was not effective for changing the corruption problems that we already knew were happening under the purview of Mike Madigan.
Okay.
All right, we do have a few more questions that have come in. So once again, if you do have a question, please text it to me at 630-303-3611. And I'm gonna start with our first question we did get. It's from Ben at the Daily Line. What specific ethics reform would address Mapes' case of lying to a grand jury and the problems with harassment and intimidation that happened when he was chief of staff?
Bad with money.
Well, one thing that
That's what the world
I think is
saying
clear
for centuries.
is that
But now
Mike
we've got-
Madigan exerted almost absolute control over the House of Representatives. That's done, as Leader Spain referenced, because of the rules that are in place, the laws that are in place. Those things need to be changed and reformed. Speaker Madigan had such control over Tim Mapes that even when offered immunity, all he had to do was tell the truth and he would escape prosecution. But instead, he lied. That shows the amount of control and power Speaker Madigan had. So we have to put things into the law and make changes to our rules that will limit the power of one person. You know, the saying that, you know, power tends to corrupt and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that's what we're seeing. Absolute power in one man has corrupted that institution and the leadership of that institution absolutely.
Okay, our next question is from Dave Dahl. He said 99 out of 100 Illinoisans could not pick Tim Mapes out of a lineup if you will pardon the comparison. How do you bring this home to people who are occupied by back to school, the weather, and where are my sunglasses?
Well, thanks, Dave, for the question, and we'll follow up with you on all of that. You know, you make a good point. Tim Mapes is the ultimate political insider, serving as the mysterious gatekeeper for Mike Madigan as the wizard of state government. And I agree, most people would not be able to pick him out of a lineup. But if you listen to the comments from the jurors in the ComEd 4 case, and hopefully we'll receive reaction from these jurors as well, they are fed up. I mean, these are regular people, regular citizens doing their civic duty. They are fed up with the corruption, the reputation of Illinois, and the bad action that is taking place all throughout state government. And so we have to continue to emphasize, and we'll continue pounding on this subject, because it is absolutely essential that there is a price to pay for corruption in the state of Illinois. And when you have a state government, a legislature that works within this type of ongoing corruption, it creates consequences for the state of Illinois, whether that's in lost population or businesses that choose not to invest here, families that are thinking twice about their residency in our state. We need to keep people in Illinois. We need to inspire people to say, this is a great state where you can come invest and be successful. And part of doing that needs to show that we have a state government that is accountable and effective. We've got a long way to go in doing that. And this should be a bipartisan issue that we could come together in an earnest way And I really invite the legislative leaders to consider, how can we work on this effectively together? And in doing so, we can send a great message to the people of Illinois that these mysterious insiders who hold outsized control of your fate and future are no longer in power, that power is being returned to the people, and you can have trust in your elected government.
Okay, thank you. We don't have anything additional that's come in, so